Hello and welcome to Shalom, Jerusalem. I'm Esther Allen. My guest on this week's episode is Robert Nicholson, who is the founder and president of the Philos Project. Robert founded the Philos Project to stimulate a next generation and a new generation of both religious and cultural engagement and exchange between the Near East and the West. Robert has degrees in Hebrew studies and in Middle Eastern history, and we are honored to have him here at the show today. Robert, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Esther. It's good to be here.
I would love for you to take a moment to tell our viewers a little bit about the Philos Project, how it started, and what exactly you all are doing.
Well, thank you for asking. The Philos Project was something I started in 2014, so we're about 6 years old. And I started the organization because I felt like there was a need for the next generation of Christians to connect with the Near East and in particular with Israel and the Jewish people. It was a product of my own spiritual investigations, which took me from complete unbelief and even sort of antagonism to Christianity to a deep belief in Christianity, especially as it related to the foundations of Christianity, which of course lie in Judaism and in the Jewish people. And one thing led to another, and I do this work now, but my goal is really to clone myself and to really get this message out to college students, to young professionals, so that they, in whatever way the Lord calls them, can go into this space and in different aspects of the space and do the same kind of work.
Tell us some of the projects that you are sponsoring and what you are doing there on the ground.
Well, there's quite a bit. There's quite a bit. A lot of it relates to creating leaders, not only here in the U.S. or the Western Hemisphere, but also actually in the Near East. So I'll mention a couple of them. One of them is especially interesting. It's called Galilee 2030, and it's a 10-year project to use the very unique environment of freedom and stability in northern Israel as a catalyst for what we hope will be a renaissance for the indigenous Christian communities of the Near East, and in particular, in this case, the Aramean or the Aramaic speaking community. There's a small community within the larger Christian community in Israel. Much of it's in the north, and what we want to do is build on that community to help really revive the ancient Christian communities of the region. One of the ways we do that is by helping these Christians to better integrate into the Jewish state. These people are Christians, they're mostly Arabic speaking, but many of them want to be part of this society and want to become closer to the Jewish majority. And one of the ways they do that is by joining the IDF. And we've actually created a pre-military preparation program where a cohort, half Jewish, half Christian, for a year studies together, does push-ups together, works together in preparation for a really shared experience in the IDF. And there's a lot happening in Galilee 2030. That's just one of the things, but that project's especially important. Another one we have is called Future Palestine. And one of the focuses of this organization or this initiative is to help train up a new generation, a pro-peace initiative among Palestinians, and in particular among Palestinian Christians. One thing that a lot of American Christians don't know is there's actually a lot of good guys in the West Bank and in Gaza. They want to live together with the Jewish people. They don't want terrorism. They don't want to always be at odds with their Jewish neighbor and are looking for ways to live together. And so we've created a number of initiatives in that space, led by one of our Palestinian fellows on the ground, to help show the love of Christ on both sides of the Green Line. And the good news is there's tons and tons of work that needs to be done. It's almost really untapped, the type of stuff that we're doing.
Robert, a lot of people think you have to choose between supporting Israel or supporting the Palestinians. And I think we would agree that that is just a false choice and maybe a misunderstanding. Could you explain why it's not an either or and why we can support both and love both?
Sure. Well, practically speaking, these two communities are not going anywhere. The Jews, thank God, are not going anywhere, but neither are the Arabs. They are going to live there one way or the other. And we would prefer, I think for good reason, that the two sides live together in peace. So practically speaking, it's in the best interest of everyone that we are friendly to both sides. But, when it comes to the spiritual side or the moral side, whatever you want to call it, these people are humans. Palestinians are humans. And although there are some bad apples among them, there's no question, many of them are, like I said before, they're actually very eager to get on with their lives and to begin coexisting with their Jewish neighbor. Unfortunately, a lot of the initiatives and organizations working in that space are actually more interested in fanning the flames of hostility than bringing these two communities together. So we're trying to show rather than tell, and trying to prove what we see to be true, even in surveys and various polls of the Palestinian people. You always see something like 25, 30%, sometimes depending on the question, 40% or more of Palestinians in these different surveys, when asked questions about peace, expressing the same kinds of opinions that you and I would express. And for me, it's just a question of leadership. You have the people, they're interested in peace. The question is, who's going to lead them there? And so that's really what we're trying to do at Philos.
Yeah. Robert, talk to us for a minute about what positive Christian engagement in the Middle East could look like. Talk to the viewer who's sitting home at TV and doesn't feel like they really can make a difference. What does positive Christian engagement look like?
Well, the word philos means friend in Greek, and we chose it for a reason. And really the reason is that there are lots of friends. We think sometimes, unfortunately, of the Near East as this sea of hostility, all these people who hate us and want to kill us. There are those people for sure. Let's not kid ourselves. But there are also hundreds of thousands, millions of good guys and girls. And it's just a matter of connecting with them and bringing them into this conversation. Until now, many Christians working on these different issues related to Israel have sort of ostracized those communities, sometimes by accident, right? They're not connected to that side of things. And so what we're trying to do at Philos, this positive Christian engagement, is relational engagement. It is constructive engagement. It's holistic engagement. It's looking at the region as a whole rather than through a straw. And that's why when people ask me, what Philos is working in Armenia or in Lebanon? What's the connection? Well, I thought you guys worked on Israel. And I said, well, look, Israel lives in a neighborhood, just like all of us do. And they're thinking about the people next door to them, even if you're not. And it's important for us to realize that if Israel is going to have a peaceful future, it's going to be because its neighbors are at peace with it. And so we need, to the extent we care about the Jewish people, to be helping, broker those relationships. So that's what I hope this new generation of Christian engagement does, really is focused on convening and catalyzing some of the stuff that's already there and just sort of needs to be brought together.
One of the things I appreciated about your website is you define terms and you have mission statements and what you stand for. I would love for you to take a minute and tell us what your view is on the state of Israel.
Well, one thing I often say is that, I support the state of Israel because I support the Jewish people and not the other way around. Sometimes Christians are more excited about the state than they are about the people who live in the state. And one of the ways that we love Israel is that we talk about Israelis and we try to get into their lives and to find out, who are the people who live there and all their variety. And it's quite a variety, as you know, Esther. And so that's one thing right off the bat, is recognizing that this is really about the Jewish people and Christian friendship with the Jewish people. That's number one. Number two, we believe that the Jewish people should be sovereign, independent, safe, secure in their ancient homeland. That's no question. But we are also interested in coming to some sort of resolution on this Palestinian issue. It's been over 70 years. Obviously, it's in everyone's interest to just get this problem somehow resolved. It's not easy. We're not claiming to have the answer, but to the extent there are ideas for different solutions, we as an organization are always interested in exploring them. And when we bring people on trips, we try to show them the human variety, but also point out that there are multiple solutions that are on the table that, if the will is there, could be achieved. And so for us, the support for Israel is both direct and unequivocal, but it also factors in, as I said before, the neighborhood. The other thing that I talk a lot about is moving from pro-Israel to co-Israel. This is something that we at Philos have been developing for over a year now, and which really means that being pro-Israel is great, but it's kind of like a cul-de-sac, right? You can be pro-Israel, you can say, I support Israel, but it doesn't really go anywhere. What we're trying to say is the best thing to do once you support Israel is to work with Israel. So right now, just a small thing, we've done a partnership with Mashav, the Israeli government humanitarian aid organization, to help indigenous people in Guatemala. It's a whole thing, I won't go into it, but this idea of Christians and Jews not just looking at each other and saying, I support you, but also then moving to stand side by side to walk toward the benefit of a third party is really where we think the whole Christian-Jewish friendship, the pro-Israel movement, if you want to call it that, should go over the next few years. Israel is very different now than it was in 1960. Israel has some power, it has a little bit of breathing room, and there's all kinds of opportunities for partnership, not just support, that actually shows the world what we're all about. What are these shared values that we keep talking about? Well, let's give you some examples.
Well, Robert, thank you for being with us. Thank you for teaching us how to go from being pro-Israel to co-Israel. And viewers, be sure to check us out at allianceforthepeaceofjerusalem.com.